So we're going to do a watercolor pen and ink fish. My niece wanted me to do a pink spiky fish. So I'm working on doing a children's book that involves a pink spiky fish. So fish come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I am going to do an oval fish because those are fairly straightforward to do. So we're going to draw sort of like a football shape. And you can of course make your fish as tall or short or anything else that you want to. We'll give its tail crescent moon kind of shape. Because she wanted to have things that were spiky. But again, if you want to do flowery or swoopy or all that other kind of stuff, that is up to you. Alright, now I'm going to add in the eyeball, and I'm going to erase out the center of the eyeball. There are just noises coming from all directions today. I have that phone set not to take calls, so I don't know how calls even manage to get into it. Alright, so we got an eyeball. Got a big smile. We're going to give it some spiky spikes. And a couple on the bottom. And a spiky fin. Alright, we're going to do blue background. So I'm just going to get a big flat brush. Oh, well actually let me do the ink first before I start doing background stuff. Alright. The spikes. Alright, now we got the gist of the shape of the fish. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint with just water for the background. So I'm just putting only water in, which is why you can't see it. So I'm just getting this background area wet, and I'm going to do it in two halves because the house here is very dry and things tend to dry fairly quickly. So I'm just going to get that wet, and I'll use this blue and put that in. Normally I use a cerulean blue, but I had this blue sitting right there. So we'll do something a little different for today. And the reason you get it wet first is that lets the paint just sort of drift and flow into the area that you put it down in, and that gives it a nice watery type of effect. So I like to do that for waters or skies or other things where you just sort of want the colors to flow and merge however they want to. So we'll put in some of these other blues to give it that kind of sense of being down in the ocean. And I like to keep the strokes going horizontally because generally in water and in the sky, clouds and waves and everything tend to move horizontally across the surfaces. So even though you don't really see the strokes, I like keeping them in that horizontal direction. Alright, just seeing if there's any other blue lying around that I can use. Paper is curling a little because of the water, but that is alright. I'm very used to it doing that, so the more that you paint in a situation, the more you get used to something, and it doesn't really cause you problems anymore. And actually the way that the water flows down the side of the paper adds its own movement to this, which I like. Alright, so we've got shades of blue in there. Maybe I want to make them a little darker. I'll pull out some of this. And the idea is to give a sense of this space that the fish is swimming through, but we don't want this space to be too detailed because it shouldn't detract from the fish. It should just be a background that the fish happens to be in. Okie doke. I will paint around the edges because I need the blue that's near the fish to dry now so that I can start painting the fish itself without having a problem. Somehow I say that and somehow I'm still in here painting near the fish. Nope, let's not paint near the fish. Let's get this part done. And this part. Alright, we're stopping there. Alright, so the fish itself is going to be pink with gold trim. So I'll rinse off my water brush, go down to a smaller brush. That one's a little too small. How about a medium sized brush? Alright, I've got a 5. And we'll work on the pink. And again, the camera is showing things fairly washed out, so I'm going to show you a picture at the end of what it actually looks like with proper colors. But until then, I think you get the gist of it. And decide your fish can be whatever color you want it to be. I'm going with a pearlescent pink because that's the color my niece has chosen. Well, she chose a pink, and that was the best pink I could find that gave an actual pink kind of color instead of a red kind of color. So let's put it just over here. Get some water to mix in with. Put that down along the bottom. Alright, so when you're painting round shapes, light tends to strike them intriguingly to create shadows at the tops and bottoms, and then create lightness at the center where they are bowed out. So often the way that people do shading on round things is to make them a little darker at the edges and a little lighter in the middle area. But it also depends on how realistic we're going. We're not trying to go for a Renaissance painter orange still life kind of level here. We're just painting a cartoon fish. So you just want a hint of what the shading could be like, but you don't want to go too over the top. I think I need to get another one of my tins and fill it with all my metallics and pearlescents and other things, so I have something easier to paint from for those. Of course, the trick will be to be able to lay things out here so you're able to see what paints I'm working with. If I have too many tins of paint, then you won't even be able to tell what I'm getting. I'll have to then make a subsection of paint to just show you the particular paints I am working with at a given time. Got a little gnat who's trying to get itself stuck into my painting. The spring is really here, even with the snow. We're getting into the season of gnats and things. So a little bit of darker color, which in watercolors generally means layered on more layers to block the light from reaching the paper. And in comparison, the areas which you've only put on a light layer end up looking lighter. Look at the tail a little darker. More color on the underbelly. Alright, so we're getting some pink in there. And if I wanted to, I could mix in a little purple or something like that into the pink to give it even more shading, but I'm going to keep its cartoony feel and keep it pretty much all of a pink color. Alright. Hey Deborah, good to see you. Alright, so now for the gold. I have a little bit of gold that I keep here on the side for doing this sort of highlighting with. I'll just gather some of that up. Put that into the gold spots. All the little gold areas filled in. Gold fin. And I like to put a little gold at each end of the tail. Alright, so last thing we need is a middle for the eyeball. Get some black. There we go. And once that dries, we could put a little bit of white catchlight in it if we wanted to. But other than that, the fish is pretty set. So you can make your fish whatever color you want, however thin or thick you want. This just happens to be a style of fish I am doing for my niece's children's book. Well, it looks like some of the pink escaped there, so I might as well show you how to fix that if that happens to you. In general, I don't mind when that happens because I like a loose, casual style, but if you do mind, all you do is you get your brush fully rinsed and then damp. So it's got some water in it, but it is damp, it is not soaking wet, and now you can sort of scrub away at that extra color. So we're going to scrub away a little, and then we're going to use a paper towel to get that pink that we just scrubbed away off the brush. And then we're going to scrub away a little more. Rinse off that pink. And you can see that it just lifts right off again. Alright, so it depends on the color. Sometimes reds can really stain the paper and it's a little harder to lift off, but in general you can get most colors at least to ease a little bit so that it's not quite as glaring that there's a color where you didn't quite want it to be. And that's a little brush here. You can generally just sweep those out afterwards. They don't damage the painting to come back out of there. There's another brush here. Brushes just shed hairs over time. That's alright. Oh, thank you, Deb. So it's actually much more saturated color in person, but I think you get the gist of it, that you put in some sort of a blue background, whatever kind of shade of blue makes you happy, and then you put in the shading for your fish, so that your fish looks like it is swimming around in the water. Alright, so have fun painting fish. Let me know if you have any questions at all about the process of painting. And in this one we did wet on wet, which was the background, which is where we painted this all in with water and then added in color so that the water spread and flowed fairly naturally. And then we also did wet on dry, which is what we did for the fish, where the paper was dry and we painted with wet paint on top of the dry paper, and that way it stayed much more where we wanted it to stay, and we were able to put in the shadows and the light and dark areas because the color did not flow all around. So here we put in signature.